wonder if it's actually kind of fungal itself. Okay, let's go. Don't think I need to change my shoes just yet. Oh. Then we take out our Liege. Boom. Bottle. So I haven't even really smoked one joint today. And I'm pretty proud of myself. I'm kind of doing weed control, the way women do food control. Have a good one, guys. See you later, man. Good to see you. Right on. Yeah, nice day, eh? Little slushy, but all right, good to meet you. All right, I'll see you again. All right. Yeah, you too. That's good dog. Um, okay, so I'm going to put this stick here because it's the wand. Things like that make me feel safe when I leave them in these little sacred places. Like, oh, no one really thinks the stick is out of place. It's pretty sure that. I hope that guy's okay. He is. Oh, something's falling. Yeah, I feel a little drained today from my New Year's experience, even though I didn't drink and I went to bed at a good time. It's just like, I'm a little concerned about my fellow man. But that guy was really healthy, young man. Healthy dog. It's nice to see. God, healthy. So healthy. Wow. Alright. I don't, Ooh. It's weird what one police officer can make you lead you to feel. Ooh, I gotta find my peace with that, but, yeah. Ooh, try to go on with my day. Tell myself I'm not doing anything illegal. You know? That's when, anxiety of the police is like, to the point where, as myself, like you just feel like, in some sense, if you're having anxiety about the police, that, do they have any reason to arrest you? And they could arrest me for any reason, any given day. Like, just you feel like just lucky in any day they don't arrest you. They're like, great, we're taking you away. You've had enough freedom, Lennon. Your YouTube channel sucks, and you're just a bad person. How many people who have spent their first night in jail are perfectly decent people pushed to extremes that almost like if you watched the Olympics, one of the events was like you have to grow up in a dysfunctional family and then make decisions while pressed by the various compulsions of alcoholic uncles, aunties, mothers, and fathers into various careers that will exhibit enough pull upon your remaining will to live that it'd be worth sacrificing the rest of your life to them. And see what happens to Bobby and Joey and Jane when they're also being touched and have to worry about losing their safety or their childhood every time a certain time of year or a certain bottle of beverage comes about. That's torture, people. That's called torture. It's called torture. And maybe some of us we're living that out. It's not coming to a theater near you. And if you can hear this, I sometimes just like people to hear that, as much as, let's say if you're getting therapy, what would be, I'm not a therapist, but I don't like therapy, but I have stories about that, but what would it, if we could just say, if I could say as a lay person, otherwise we're just not going to go anywhere, that therapy was a place where you could be honest about how you feel. And, or something a therapist would tell you is make a journal about how you feel every day. All your emotions, okay? Anytime something significant comes along, write it down. And you would say, oh, what if everything is significant? Even this right now. And I couldn't write it all down fast enough. Can I carry a camera and just talk to myself? Okay. And what if I spent a lot of time outside for 15,000 miles, which is over halfway around the equator, and parlayed 25 years of prolific creative writing, classical romantic poetry and epic poetry, and novels and philosophy and just whatever I needed to write, alcoholism, cult psychology, just straining. Now, don't think that these books are so great, but don't think that a man does not strain. Please do not think that. Please do not do that injustice to my heart, that I did not strain to great lengths in the sheer faith that it took to write down any thoughts you could put together after a lifetime of abuse. So just give me that consideration. And not just for me, that my abuse was so great, but maybe even for everyone for whom you could be convinced it was such and such a great abuse, and they might struggle to write it all down. And while they were doing that, to live out several careers worth of literature, while most people just thought you were an unemployed bum and treated you that way from time to time while they were sexually assaulting you. And along the way, I found that I sort of added to poetry studying abnormal human psychology. Just the fact that I had decided to call myself a poet, which I rarely did, to dedicate myself essentially without really calling myself one, that was all I really felt that I did that had any real purpose to my life in terms of like what you would offer your best to the world and what you had to give. You weren't sure what to give, life is like that. But one thing you had, and maybe in the end everything you had, went into poetry in a really cool way that traveled through time. And you knew that, and you were moved by that power and that magic, like all the heavens and the earth. And you struggle, like anyone would struggle, with even holding that thought in your for longer than the time it took to write it down somewhere that nobody would ever read. And one day, you started to see that you'd planted things in your own heart that not everything to survive was wrong. And if everything that people do that is wrong is to survive, how come the way I survive is wrong? Or the way I use my mind or my flesh and blood? When people that do wrong things, they're only doing them to survive. And what I'm doing isn't wrong, is it? It's not illegal. It's not illegal to do this, is it? You wouldn't tell a police officer to put me or my family in jail for talking, would you? Why do I fear that, though? Why does my flesh and blood quiver in my human frame? Just to see a police officer in an unmarked car. Right? A man who's for being a white male who fits such and such a description. And more to the point, at the behest of people who were stalking me for years in a public, provincially owned park. I've encountered drunks, sociopaths of various degrees, and very self-absorbed middle-aged women, all of whom have their place in the natural kingdom. I don't like them, personally, at all, and I know a lot of them are trying, but they feel like death to me, and if I never met another one again, I'd be a happy man. Unfortunately, that's how I feel. I hate meeting self-absorbed people who have personal needs, and I totally, totally understand that more than anybody, you know. But understanding doesn't mean I know. And so a lot of women like to tell me everything about, I'm like the most receptive male they've ever met. But don't go patting me on the back yet. I'm sure I'm not the only one. And yeah, I mean, these people can walk up to you in a park and walk with you for 3 hours with almost not taking a breath, and hold any conversation for any number of hours while taking my time. There's no real therapeutic contract, but it is all about them. It is all about them. You waver in and out of existence as long as you need to be there, like a spirit almost, disincarnate, that just, you're still there. Good, I can keep talking. And it's also kind of as well, because these somewhat ditzy-headed middle-aged women, not because they have distinct sexual needs, but their pull upon my physical and emotional body is something into the category of sexual assault. But, in a range of things that you think to hold against them, but they are making you sick. They're draining your energy, right? So you're lucky if just time goes on and you can kind of just get your distance from them. And they're not always people some of them are not women who are used to talking to people that much anyway. So they'll just kind of recede back into the background, or, different varieties. But to be afraid of having your life interrupted, I'm trying to put it into perspective, in the sense that I think one could convince me that many of the instances of, say, bigotry that I've experienced are just things that could happen under those conditions. And in some instances, I've learned, for instance, that other men of much greater youth than I faced similar appearance, and males in particular had faced similar problems in the area. So that's comforting. There are some men who commiserate with me a bit about a lot of things, not necessarily women, but this one woman is pretty gross. Everyone can be gross in their way. Men can be gross in their way. Women can be gross in their way. Just in need, maybe, of a slap. You can tell when they kind of stick to your energy a bit. And I just go through a few days of, like, even if they seem like the nicest people in the world, just cleaning my aura, cleaning my bitching and screaming and yelling like I am, and cleaning my aura, because police officer and this white woman, I don't think there's scarcely a difference in at least the kind, if not totally the level, if not the kind of dangers which a man of my temperament and my way of life, in terms of introducing me to, like, I met a really nice guy here, right? But to people who are not always in the upper class and not always in the lower humans, who are very fake, who have survived, and humans, white people, can present problems, for me, enough that I'm kind of sick of it. I based most of my adult life thus far in talking about and writing about violence, and living one of the nicest places I've ever lived and wrote, turned into one of the worst places I ever lived and wrote. And it just sort of pushed me along to keep writing, keep paying attention to these events. But of course, no female psychic ever predicted that this is what I was meant to do with my life. But in some respects, because I'm surviving too. Again, like everything people do, they do to survive. The wrong things people do, they do to survive. So why can't I do what I do to survive? There seems to be this question, maybe in my own mind, if nowhere else, as to what I do with my time. And my dad was very hard on me in ways I'm not sure I even fully appreciate, as much as it even got to a very physical issue for me. And I am very, very, very aware that when someone puts you into a very physically painful disadvantage in life, that you know, you don't have a lot of people who really can kind of walk with you like a wolf and speak your language. You know, if you're a strong kind of man. You know, I didn't know I was strong, but I guess I am apparently. And I don't feel strong most of the time. My self-image is another incredibly strong person, but nonetheless, I've walked 10 miles a day for 5 years in the Canadian wet and cold, and I'm still here. I face bears here in this park, actually, what I consider the G4, which is the kind of culmination of my work. Walking here, the slush, the snow, everything changes in nature. I've got a crap coming. Find a good place to take a crap soon. It's not too urgent yet, but it's good. I haven't even talked about crap all day, which I usually do. So that tells you something. My occupations have been quite time consuming. Man, that young man was in such good health. It's so great to see. You know, it's like, wow. He reminded me of just very loosely. He's not the same person at all, I understand. But the best approximation of knowing someone at that age, that health, would be my friend. He was, 13, 14 years old. This guy looks even healthier. I don't know his specific health. I just mean like compared to a lot of old, you see, but also just sheer positivity. Really all-around decent guy. That's what I mean by health. Like, thin or fat or whatever. It's just what's your attitude to things. It doesn't have to be like you're a super positive person, but I think overall I have a pretty great attitude for someone like me. And even though I say I don't like a brand or anything, essentially, before there was such a thing as YouTube, I sort of chose what kind of person I was going to be in life every day. Every time I guess I stayed away from work and sat around and wandered and wrote poetry or went for coffee on welfare of some kind, or my mother's father's mercy and generosity, or a student loan or a credit card, which I probably never repaid and never intended to. And I chose along the way the kind of person that I would be, so that if I was doing a YouTube channel and I was going to say, well, I'm not really about having a brand, I wouldn't be entirely true, because I've chosen someone to be. It may be difficult to put a name to it for some and not for others. Okay, what am I doing? No, that's the wrong way. Felt a little sucked in there. His dog, very friendly. It was really good with Ed, and wow, I mean, I gotta tell you, it puts me to shame, actually. I think necessarily all my insecurities as a person, like, things sometimes do, you don't take note, like, even with the police and stuff, I think it also brings out my insecurities. I don't think any man really thinks he's insecure, even if he's always insecure, I think my dad and mom were in their way always insecure, or had reason to be. Never really thought they were, or maybe they didn't see it that way. Because in life you have to be strong. We are strong. Yeah, I think a weak point for me would be that there's a lot of insecurity in life. I don't mind admitting it, I live on this. I often get treated certain ways, and I think to say, like, hey, I'm on disability. You shouldn't, for anxiety and depression, you shouldn't be treating me that way. I'm a good guy. But that doesn't really sound right to people. So I don't tell them, like, you're not only just harassing someone in your weird, creepy way, but you're someone who already struggles with having been raped and had parts of their body, altered by predatory types of humans who have demonstrated a range of unfortunately negative behavior to me for reasons that left an indelible impression upon my mind. And you can never really tell exactly what they are, but they seem to be very focused on telling you what they are, in so much as anyone feels justified in hurting you. They're justified in resorting to such means to tell you something, right? To communicate something to you. Whether they know what it is, or whether psychiatrists know what it is, or you'll ever know what it is, or so much as you're shocked for the rest of your life, you'll want to sometimes pick apart the carcass and find out exactly what it was by chewing on the bones of it. And that's what I do. And those bones become my words. And I give life to them. I give life to the dead bones of these awful things that most people would say, why don't you just fucking leave it alone? It just left a big impression on me, which is a nice way. I'm kind of like a professional scapegoat. I'll be like, oh, I just had such a negative impression. It's like, it shocked me. 20 shoulder dislocations and surgery is kind of shocking. It's like, don't make me shock you about what I've endured. It shocks me every day. Right, I spare you from having to listen to it. I don't want to be that guy. And somehow I've maintained a very vulnerable sense of self, which a lot of people do tend to want to hide away. I get that, and I get that how I talk, in and around my own, say, deepest vulnerabilities, where my brain has gone to protect itself, and talking about such things that you would think, dude, like, don't you ever think that maybe you're a psycho? Wouldn't that be Occam's razor put to its finest test? To say that the simplest conclusion was that I was just as fucked up as I say everybody, because I'm so insecure and fucked. And don't think that's not a heavy burden for me. And that now I want you to separate yourself from this, because I don't want this to sound harsh to anybody, and it will. So just understand you have a right to that opinion, but you don't want to share it with the following people who happen to share that opinion, which are the people who raped and attempted to murder me. So please separate yourself from that. It doesn't mean you share in any of their disease of mind at all. It's quite reasonable, really, to think that it's not so far-fetched to reasonable, hardworking people. I just highlight that, from my perspective, why I probably assert a kind of strength behind my words, having to send such accusations under those circumstances, that I already feel like I'm constantly defending my sanity. Ironically enough, while I'm going to probably to prove that I have none of it to begin with. So, and then risking, as I suppose anyone telling the truth might risk, and just looking like the kind of carcass of the very thing I'm examining. Something that just has to do what it does, because it doesn't know way. Just look at this shocked thing. Look at this shocked human. Am I doing? And if conversely you think, well, maybe I'm just really strong, right? And people are intimidated by me. I don't know why. I'm the least fucking secure human being that walks thousands of these square miles in many, many very eminent practical ways economically. I am trying to, but I'm learning to generate more money. And that's one. And that's a big for me, but I like to break it down into part of my day-to-day sort of professional development. My various wanderings when I'm feeling generous to myself. It's like, they're professional development, Landon. So it's not really that I'm crazy and I have to walk around. It's not like I really think this time. But it's like when your teachers take a few days off to eat another free meal on the government tit and present to talk about you. Professional development day. So that's what I call some of my days. Professional development. Remember that sneaking tiny little moment that you felt sorry that you got to stay home and your teachers had to go to school? Yeah, anyway. Oh, wow. It's not there. No, I come out here every day to see things. I'm watching, which stirs up my hackles. I'm watching the body camera of a police officer who allegedly arrives on the scene of someone who's murdered his family. And watching this video, which has like, I don't know, millions of views. There's a guy that, talks about the body language. And I thought, man, it's amazing just how the YouTuber can talk so clinically about this. He doesn't, he is rhetorical at times. Oh, this guy's so stupid. And it's like, Jesus, I mean, stupid or not, if it's true, he's murdered his wife and children. And I walk away from this video and I freeze it in my mind to the point that he comes out, though he's probably rehearsed this, comes out of the wife's bedroom, was missing, with the wedding ring, and he's holding it out like he wants nothing to do with it. His body language, he's got it at the end of one finger, just someone take it away from him. Or that's what he's concocted to do because maybe he's contriving. And I thought to myself, like, maybe one thread you could pluck out of this, whatever you're seeing here, which seems really macabre, dark, is what if marriage killed those people? The way that he, unfortunately, he was being killed by marriage. And that would at least, if not the final conclusion you would make, a way into thinking about how this guy started to think that he needed to plot to kill so he could get out of his marriage. The things about our society that might lead an unbalanced individual to think that the system would work against them in achieving a result. There was a female in the United States, similar country, who murdered her baby for the same reason, and she was acquitted. Now, I don't want to smack you in the face with this. I mean, she had an exceptional defense attorney who pointed at the cause of all of her lies was that she'd been sexually abused by her father. This was in his closing statements. There was no way to really corroborate this remark, which in some sense you would think was actually not legal, but I guess it is. And maybe they had introduced it earlier, I don't know. I guess they would have to. Let's just assume they didn't. In any case, it's like, wow, how do you, it introduces you doubt. How do you know? How do you know what you did? How do you know she did this? And if she did, how do you know she didn't do it because, she'd been sexually abused? Well, I mean, this does nothing for the child. She suffocated. Maybe it doesn't alleviate fears in us that if you were to solve this case and crack the code on what happened to this child, there'd be so many other children who still had to fear for their lives. No big lawyer, no army of well-meaning adults may be able to save them. And we should take this moment to apologize to them, don't we? They're probably not listening to this, but it's like, we're sorry. We've got so much really to survive, and we take our bullshit out of our system. We just got so much that we're surviving every day, and there aren't always names for all of it. So we just call it life because it's polite. Oh, it's the biosphere. It's like, the political, economic, and psychosexual biosphere is making me feel like I want to kill myself. I hope nobody arrests me or rapes me during this time of added vulnerability, like male menstruation. There are times when I feel more vulnerable. I've got to, I feel a little ill today. Not ill, I'm actually quite stoned, so that's why. But the marijuana that I buy, it's very strong. Wow, it must be high on THC. So I'm gonna get through here, kind of moving quickly now because I know it's gonna rain, but I want to maybe stop and change my shoes, and I think the only good time to do that is going to be at the quarry because there's no rain there. So that means I got another 20 minutes to half an hour. And that was the talk about taking a prep, which will also make me feel better. So I'll take my path accordingly. Since I know my feet are wet and they're gonna get wet, I'm gonna take. It will take me away from people. It's not a people can get. Be interesting to see what happens in the way of precipitation, whether the snow will go or if it's going to come back and freeze the rest of it. It's it can be quite a difficult time of year, and then, but that's why I brought my watch of food. I gotta start talking about some positive things. So that's enough. That's enough abnormal psychology for one day. Fuck. I just think I gotta get my mind above. You know, but to be fair, the blog that I wrote today doesn't matter anymore. I've given my blog, like, don't worry about it. If you're listening to this, like, dude, it's enough to just listen to you're gonna read your blog, because I know it's gonna be more crazy talk. You know, and to be fair, like, I think if you go to any blogs at all, it's, you know, if it's food focused or fashion focused, boom, boom, boom. It's kind of like an online casino. You're getting a little bit of like, hey, I like the way this person, you know, has done their website. Your sense, given that as a consumer, you are of anything and everything pretty ingenious in what to expect. So at my blog, you're not going to get that. So I'm sorry. It will, that for that reason alone, unfortunately, be a waste of your time. And given the percentages, that's probably a choice. Now, after I've given you the sort of song, it is cosmicheaven.blogspot.com, and today is January the 2nd, 2022, and I wrote something about human torture, so enjoy. What's great for me, it's okay if you don't want to read it. It is hard, it's hard just like this, but at least it's just a page long. And I sit down, and now it's changed. I had to get writing again. And it's evidence to me, on the one hand, that my miles and miles of thinking and talking can go into something that makes any sense at all. So that's one. Two, that if I'm right, and given the freedom of rhetoric to, well, you know, I may think I'm the only person in the world writing like this, talking like this, but all rhetoric is a stretch for people to read sometimes, because one goes to great lengths to say anything at all that you need to say. That doesn't necessarily mean you're saying something that somebody needs to hear. But you obviously have to be convinced that what you're saying is worth listening to.